So right wingers, you know how like they're like you're like, yeah, we're gonna bring jobs back to America, right? We're gonna bring these great paying jobs. We're gonna go back to 1950s, 1960s economic plans. Those were progressive plans, right? That were like still going from the New Deal. And from 1940 to 1980, almost 40% of our labor force was unionized. That's why your grandfather or uncle, whoever, had a job that paid well enough to buy a house and have a car and feed a family with the wife not having to work or only having to work a part time secretary job or some shit and send all the kids to college and then retired with a motherfucking pension is because of labor unions. That's it. That's the reason why right now a McDonald's worker in, say, fucking Denmark probably makes more money than a fucking Honda worker in fucking Alabama. Because guess what? Norway's labor force has like a fucking 40% union membership. Almost 30 or 40% of their workforce is unionized because it's a progressive policy. It's good for the workers. That's what I don't see on this discussion. I don't see we're going to bring these jobs back. Are they going to be unionized? Because we're doing away with OSHA. Trump has already been the biggest anti-union president since Ronald Reagan. You think these capitalist factory owners are going to give you guys all these great wages and benefits and not have you risk your life or health while they cut regulations to cut costs without collective bargaining and progressive policies? That's funny, man. You guys, the dangling carrot. You guys just love that dangling carrot.
All of the manufacturing in China is done by robots. So for everyone who's gaslit themselves into believing that these tariffs are somehow good for the American people because it's bringing manufacturing jobs back, I have a couple things to say. One, there's no manufacturing work for you. Two, civilizations typically evolve beyond factory work because it's safer, cheaper, and more efficient to have robots doing the work. Three, your politicians are lying to you intentionally. They know that the factory work is done by robots. The fucking manufacturing that we have in this country is done primarily by robots, very little human power. And if we're talking about textiles, that's prison work. Why would they pay you a living wage when they can pay pennies to a prisoner illegally? Don't forget, your politicians have allowed corporations to put the interests of the corporations and the shareholders above all else. They would never hire you over a robot when the robot is better for the bottom line of the shareholders. How many times do we have to tell you they don't give a fuck about you? I just watched that piece of shit Josh Hawley, Republican senator from Missouri, who's always talking about how great the markets are doing, and that shit trickles down to the people. I just watched him say that he doesn't care about how bad the stock market's doing because that's only bad for the stock bros. What he cares about is his constituents because they're happy about getting manufacturing jobs. So we're supposed to believe that for once in his life, he gives a shit about his constituents. The stock market be damned. He knows full well that there's no manufacturing jobs coming for his constituents. He just can't fucking say that his dear leader fucked up. Frankly, I think it's because he doesn't think that he fucked up. This is somehow good for all of them. It's a going out of business sale. It is a private equity takeover of this country. Liquidation. You're cheering on our reversion back to the 1800s industrial revolution, and it's not fucking coming. It's weird to be cheering that on, but also it's not coming. You're not getting new jobs, and now you're just not going to be able to afford fucking anything. Congratulations, you played yourselves.
Okay, first things first, don't mind all this. I'm already in bed. It's been one of those weeks. Two, I agree with you wholeheartedly if it were to ever come back, but I don't think it is. But I've told this story before on my other account. I lived in West Pennsylvania for a while. This is 2008 into 2009. I would have arguments with people in their late 30s, early 40s that were still waiting at the time for manufacturing jobs to come back. These are people that in like 1992 were making like $12 to $16 an hour, mostly out of high school. Go look up what that is in today's dollars. Go do yourself the service if you are prepared to be fairly angry and look up what $12 and $16 in 1992 is today. These are the same people that got to go work a factory job and just sit at one station all day, not be stressed with 900 different micro multitasks. They got to have one job, work that job, have insane benefits, and make absurd amounts of money. There's an argument to be made for their unions getting greedy, whatever. All that aside, these people made so much money, and they somehow think that those jobs are going to come back. For those jobs to come back equitably, there is no manufacturing job outside of like some contracted union where the company has already been legally roped into being like, hey, you got to give us huge buyouts if you leave the country. Like, no one's coming back to this country to pay Americans 45 to 50 bucks an hour for anything. It's not happening. And these people, it's the reason Pennsylvania is a swing state, because they're too stupid and they believe the lie of, we'll bring manufacturing back. And it's like, again, the reason it's a swing state is because the voting population in Pennsylvania and, other states like it is too stupid to get in sync with reality.
MAGA believes that we want to make our money either by working in the mill or in low.
Let me tell you about manufacturing in the United States. I just got fired from a place that makes car parts for BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Tesla. BMW is putting in like 15 new robots over there. It's going to take them 2 years to set that stuff up with the computers and the engineers and the robots and getting everything. 2 years before they can actually start running it full time. And that's with robots in the building. Where's the infrastructure for manufacturing here in this country? Go to Detroit and see what happens when you leave those buildings alone. It's crumbled. We don't have infrastructure for it. Y'all who believed this were sold a pipe dream. It's never happening. 2 years before they can start running shit over there.
We're going to have AI and biotechnology, which is going to completely alter what it means to be a human. And so here's my point. If you develop early on in your life a mentality that says that traditional values is overwhelmingly the most important thing to you, then what you're doing is you're priming yourself to not being able to adapt to a changing world. So by the time you hit 40, which is colloquially known as middle age, at least right now in 2025, you are not well suited for the world because the world has left you behind. The world has changed in many ways. When I look at like Trump's tariffs, for example, and this might seem like a tangent, but it does make sense. When I look at Trump's tariffs, what it's going to do to America is make us ill-equipped to actually adapt to a changing economic landscape. And that economic landscape was going to change with or without us. We're not going to be adapted for it. And the reason why is because of this idea of bringing back manufacturing to America, which is a conservative idea. We want to go back to the way things were. That's not how the world works. The world doesn't go backwards. You can't move time backwards. You can only move it forward. So if you're a young person developing this mentality, that mentality is not going to help you. It's going to hurt you.
People are asking to go back to a time when factories and manufacturing was the bomb, the everything, right? And they called these jobs that really good jobs. You had job security, but your top salary was already defined for you. How much will you make now? 20 bucks, 25 bucks? Let's say 30 bucks an hour. That is your ceiling. You're not moving forward from there. That's what people would be making. The reason why we don't live in those times is because we allegedly, I thought, we have evolved as an economy and we move from manufacturing to research, development, innovation, and services. That's why in the past few decades, you had things like Microsoft, like Apple, those companies that developed and just changed the world. And we should be part of that. Our government should be motivating us to go to school, making it easier for us to get an education. Because in that way, you and your family will move forward. Do you want to make 30 bucks an hour the rest of your fucking life? Or have a ceiling of 50 bucks an hour where you could go to school, work hard, get help from the government to get your master's or anything else, and then get a job where you're going to get $100 an hour, $150 an hour. Why didn't $500 an hour? We are being offered to go back to a time where robber barons made a shit ton of money out of our fucking sweat. You're supposed to nurture alliances. You're supposed to nurture relationships in which the country that does something better than you do is able to provide that for you and vice versa. Military unit, you don't have a soldier that does fucking everything. You have soldiers that rely on other soldiers to perform those jobs, and they build strong relationships that make them stronger as a whole. I'm Alex. This is my rant, and I'm out.
Okay, why are so many people Trump voters, and why do they feel so displaced and disenfranchised by minorities? It's because they are being displaced and disenfranchised. It's just not by minorities, it's by America, right? And this is the reason we know who J.D. Vance is because he wrote a memoir to try to show this. And it happened to come out just after the first Trump election, but sort of showing like the disenfranchisement and the displacement of small town America. And here's the reality. Small town America is dying. The world is changing. There are less than 1,000 farming families in the country, right? And in the summer of 2020, my little family got stuck in an RV driving around the country because we were supposed to be traveling the world, and then COVID. Okay. And I've written about this in Un-American, which is my video book that you can access on my Patreon, a whole book that I wrote about whiteness and power and privilege and myself and my crazy stories. And we ended up driving backwards across the Lewis and Clark Trail from Seattle to Washington, D.C. Okay. And in that drive, you could see it, right? You could see, first of all, we saw no Black people from the time we left Seattle till the time we hit Chicago, right? Very, very white. And the towns are dying. The jobs are going away. The Army recruiting stations are some of the only ways to get out of there. And this is what happens when huge shifts in the world happen. In Culting of America, I'm arguing that one of the reasons we've switched back from trusting bureaucracy and experts to charismatic leaders is because we lived through an apocalypse, which was the industrial age running smack into the information age and leaving nothing untouched. And so right now, all of these disenfranchised white people, especially the men, are very scared and very angry. And so when an idiot comes in, and tells them that immigrants are the reason and trans people are the reason and gives them someone to hate, they fall for it. But they fall for it because somebody did screw them over, right? The country, the leadership of the country, and changing times. And there's this little piece about white men and why they are so angry. And it's because they were born 50 years too late. And this is exactly my ex-husband, who I had to testify against to be kicked out of the military as a white supremacist a decade after I left him, and is the reason why I wrote Un-American. And it's the same as J.D. Vance, as all these people. If they were born 50 years ago, it would have been good enough. It was good enough to just be a mediocre white man. And they're trying to do that again, right? And it's so funny because I always hear people saying like, if more of the pie for other people doesn't mean less of the pie for you. Yes, it does. I don't think you understand how pie works, right? It's not enough to be a mediocre white man when you have to compete with everyone else and everyone else who's had to be better than you the whole time. And so they are PO'd. Just like we look back in the day 50 years ago and say, man, our grandmothers were screwed 50, 75 years ago. They look back and they say, fudge, why can't I have what my grandfather had, which is just only working 8 hours a day and having a personal slave at home in my kitchen, raising my children, and everything and the world just bowing for me, right? So very complicated. Some of it is legitimate. Again, their way of life is dying. And when the world shifts, the people in the margins usually die, right? So they're pissed. They're scared. They're watching the American dream evaporate just like everybody else. And by the way, I want to be very clear that I am in no way defending them or the decision to vote for Trump. They are being abused and manipulated by a narcissistic cult leader who's giving them a place to focus their fear and something they can do about it. And this is what cults do. They come in, they weaponize your discontent that already exists. This is why some sort of gratitude practice can be really good to keep you out of cults. Right? They weaponize your discontent that already exists, and then they promise you that their way, their method, make America great again, is going to fix everything. The promise of the cult is always a lie. Right? So no validity, no justification to these people for believing it. They have fallen for a cult. They are being conned. It's not true. And it's not okay to all of the minorities and everybody else. I'm just saying this is why it's happening. This is what we are seeing. And the other thing is, like, him wrecking the country is going to affect them too. So what you voted for. The promise of the cult is always a lie. It's always just about power and labor. I'm Danielle, a scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership. I wrote a book called Uncultured, which you can't get on here right now because it is sold out. But it's on Spotify side of the subscription side of Spotify, so you can listen to it for free. I recorded it myself, and it was recommended twice in the New York Times. My book, by the way, is the blue corollary to J.D. Vance's Hillbilly Elegy. I'm the blue J.D. Vance. I realized after the election, which is to say, the veteran that has a memoir out explaining to the world what happened. His was, this is why angry white men voted for Trump, and mine is, your family's in a cult. Check out Uncultured.
Now, we're not going to have all factories come back. Like clothing manufacturing, that's tough to bring back. But what kind of manufacturing are you talking about returning here?
Well, you can't just give that away. See, what's going to happen is robotics are going to replace the cheap labor that we've seen all across the world. I mean, think of what our factories did. They went to the cheapest labor in the whole world, slave labor, cheap labor, the worst environmental conditions, polluting the heck out of it. And then we bring back those cheap products here and we feel good about ourselves because we don't see the pain.